All right, let's jump right in. Welcome to today's Explainer. We're about to unpack what is arguably one of the absolute most bizarre, fascinating, and honestly, oddly relatable stories from the ancient world. We're pulling a tale straight out of section 13 of the Mahabharata, specifically the Astika Parva. And hey, if you think your family puts pressure on you, just wait. You haven't seen anything yet. Wait until you see what our protagonist has to deal with today. We're going to explore the tale of the ascetic and the whole.
So, I want you to literally picture this scene for a second. You're walking through the wilderness, right? And you suddenly stumble upon this massive, dark hole in the earth. You look down into it, and what do you see? A group of men, hanging, completely upside down, and they're suspended over this terrifying void by just a single fraying rope made of grass fibers. But wait, it gets crazier. If that isn't terrifying enough, there's a rat sitting there, just quietly, secretly chewing away at that very rope from all sides. It is such a striking, almost surreal image. Like, what on earth is actually happening here?
Well, the protagonist of our story stumbles upon this exact bizarre scene, and he basically asks the same thing we're all thinking. Who are you thus hanging heads down in this hole by a rope of varina fibers that is again secretly eaten into on all sides by a rat living here? Now, what's incredibly brilliant about this quote is the heavy symbolism. I mean, this isn't just some random rodent. That rat chewing the rope, it's a terrifying metaphor for the ticking clock of time. The rope represents a family lineage, and that rat of time is just slowly, inevitably eating away at it, pushing these poor guys closer and closer to total extinction. But before we find out who those hanging men actually are, we gotta rewind for just a second. You know how the Mahabharata famously uses stories within stories? It's like a giant puzzle? Well, a sage named Saunaka is asking the narrator, Sauti, some really specific questions. He wants to know about a monarch named Janamejaya who held this massive snake sacrifice, literally trying to wipe out all serpents. And crucially, Saunaka wants to know about the guy who actually rescued those snakes, an ascetic named Astika.
So Sauti totally agrees to tell this long, really charming story of Astika. But first, he sets up his credibility. He explains how this history, which is considered a Purana, was first recited by the great Krishna Dwaipayana, then it got passed down to the wise Lomaharshana, and finally it was narrated by his son, Sauti, to the dwellers of the Naimisha forest. Basically, Sauti is reciting it exactly as he heard it. And to understand Astika the rescuer, we actually have to start with the story of his dad.
Section 2. Meet Jaratkaru, the ascetic. So, our main guy today is Astika's father, this incredibly powerful man named Jaratkaru. And to really get him, you have to understand the term brahmacharan. Basically, this is someone engaged in austere devotions, a person who eats sparingly, acts as a great ascetic, and keeps lust under complete 100% control. So Jaratkaru isn't just, a guy who likes minimalism or goes on a quiet weekend retreat. No, he is a man entirely consumed by extreme spiritual discipline. He is dedicating his whole entire existence to hoarding spiritual merit through intense denial. Let's look at exactly what that lifestyle entailed, because it's wild. Jaratkaru was foremost among his people, the Yayavaras. He traveled the world constantly, visiting sacred waters, and he just rests simply wherever night overtook him. But here's the kicker. He practiced austerity so hard that he literally lived upon air only, and he renounced sleep forever. I mean, no way, right? He went totally off the grid, giving up the most basic human needs, food and sleep, just to build up this massive reservoir of ascetic power. He was basically a blazing fire of spiritual energy. Okay, so keep that in mind. We have a guy who has given up food, sleep, and all worldly attachments, and he's the one walking through the wilderness who suddenly finds those men hanging in the hole. Section 3. The ultimate guilt trip. Okay, so when Jaratkaru asks those hanging men who they are, they give him an answer that is just absolutely dripping with ancient family drama. They say, "Woe to us! That wretch hath entered upon a life of austerities only. The fool doth not think of raising offspring by marriage." Yep, turns out these hanging men are the Yayavaras. They are literally sinking into the earth because their lineage is dying out, and they're down there fiercely complaining about their descendant, some guy named Jaratkaru, who is apparently too busy being holy to give them grandchildren. I mean, the universal relatability here is just incredible. Even a hyper-powerful sage who literally lives on air cannot escape his family nagging him about settling down and having kids. This right here brilliantly illustrates the absolute core conflict of our text today. On one side, we have Jaratkaru's goals, right? Hoarding ascetic penance, renouncing sleep and food, maintaining this total spiritual focus for personal liberation.
And then on the other side, we have the ancestors' goals: marriage, raising offspring, and extending the family line. It is the ultimate classic clash between personal spiritual ambition and absolute undeniable familial duty.
Which brings us to what might genuinely be the most delightfully awkward moment in the entire epic. Imagine this. Jaratkaru was standing there, right on the edge of the hole, listening to these men hanging over a void calling him a wretch and a fool. And he has to confess. He just looks down and goes, "Ye are even my sires and grandsires, I am that Jaratkaru. Oh, tell me how I may serve you." Talk about an awkward family reunion. He realizes in that exact moment that his pursuit of personal perfection is directly causing the torment of his own ancestors.
Well, the ancestors don't miss a beat. They immediately give him a direct command: try your absolute best to beget a son. But here is the theological heavy hitter. They argue that fatherhood actually provides more merit than all of those ascetic penances he's been hoarding up. They basically command him, set your heart upon marriage and offspring. Save us from extinction. They're laying it out there, telling him that his individual spiritual wealth means absolutely nothing if the family tree dies with him. So Jaratkaru is totally trapped. He spent his entire life avoiding worldly attachments, but he definitely can't just leave his grandfathers hanging upside down to be eaten by the rat of time. He has to do something.
Which brings us to Section 4, the impossible marriage vow.
So Jaratkaru yields, but oh man, he makes sure they know he is absolutely not happy about it. He tells them, "I shall not marry for my sake, nor shall I earn wealth for enjoyment, but I shall do so for your welfare only." The crucial takeaway here is that Jaratkaru is being incredibly stubborn. He's holding on to his ascetic identity for dear life. He refuses to enjoy the process. He's saying, look, I'll do my duty according to the rules, but this is strictly business. No fun allowed.
Because he absolutely refuses to act like a normal suitor, Jaratkaru sets 3 completely non-negotiable demands for finding a wife. First, and this is wild, the bride must have the exact same name as him. Second, her friends or family must willingly give her to him as a gift in charity, like alms. And third, he will not act otherwise, having given his word. I mean, let's just really think about this for a second. We're talking about a guy who is poor, who literally lives on air and wanders the forest, and he is demanding a wife named Jaratkaru, who is just freely handed over to him as charity. Yeah, good luck with that, right?
Which leaves us with a massive, looming question to wrap up today's explainer. Will a poor, completely sleep-deprived ascetic who lives on air actually find a bride who happens to share his exact name and whose family is willing to just give her away as charity? Honestly, it seems mathematically impossible. Yet, as we mentioned at the very beginning, we know he eventually has a son named Astika who saves the snakes. So, how does this impossible marriage actually happen? Well, it involves a spectacular twist with snake kings and destiny, and that is exactly what we'll be exploring next time. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and keep questioning the ancient stories.